Well, you want to start collecting PSP games, huh? And you're not sure where to start? Well, lucky for you, I've spent most of my life collecting for this little guy, and I've created a short list of a few great games to start your collection. Now, I'm trying to steer away from a lot of the really expensive ones, and I've only allowed myself one really pricey game, so this list is really good for the casual audience who's just trying to build up their collection, and the collection actually be good. A lot of these are also PSP exclusives, and not all of them have escaped the system as of yet, so you'll be playing games made for the PSP. Let's start off with our first few games. The first on the list is the absolute classic and one of the major launch titles of the PSP, Daxter. This is a spin-off of the Jak and Daxter series starring everyone's favourite little guy. It's a platforming game with some basic combat and collectible elements similar to the mainline entries. And it takes place in between the time gap of Jak 1 and 2, where the pair get separated, and focuses on what Daxter did during that time, that being I almost said a Verminator, being an exterminator. You'll travel around this small open map of Haven City doing requests for your boss with different buildings and environments for you to traverse. It sounds simple, and it is, but it's executed really well. The L and R buttons are used for camera movement, the combat is really snappy, and the platforming sections feel super satisfying to get through. You'll be sliding, crawling, jumping, and all of it just feels great. This is a super cheap game, and it runs really well, and essential for any PSP collection that you can find pretty much anywhere. Now, jumping off from that PlayStation classic, we go to another, that being the Ratchet & Clank series, and the specific PSP game, Ratchet & Clank Size Matters. This was a PSP exclusive made specifically for the system. Now, I want to say I'm not the biggest Ratchet & Clank player, I've only really played a few of them, but I really love the novelty of having what felt like a huge, big budget, big property game on the handheld system. The story is pretty silly, with focusing on the duo being interrupted on vacation and it spirals into a big adventure from there, but the actual moment-to-moment gameplay is really great. You'll get a vast array of weapons and tools at your disposal, and you'll have the ability to buy and upgrade stuff as you see fit. It still looks pretty great as well, apart from Ratchet's eyes, but besides that, it's a nice little addition, it's pretty cheap, and you can find it pretty much anywhere. Please add this to your PSP collection. There is a heap, and I mean a absolute heap of racing games on the PSP, and I only wanted to pick a couple, so the first one I decided to go with was a PlayStation mainstay, Wipeout Pure. Now, there are a few Wipeout games on the PSP, but I'm going to recommend the launch title Wipeout for the system. This game is literally everywhere, and you can pick it up pretty much at any retro store. Facebook Marketplace, it's literally everywhere, and you can find it for super cheap most of the time. In Wipeout Pure, you'll be racing on these zero-gravity tracks, and it's got a lot of mainstays of great racing games. It's got really snappy and fun track design, good music, it's got classic item boxes that you can use to gain the upper hand on your opponent, lots of different vehicles for you to try out, and you can really see what fits you best, just like a lot of standard racing games. But what makes Wipeout different is the cool, futuristic aesthetic and brutal fast speeds that the game really shines with, and it also runs really great, so while you're going at these breakneck speeds, you won't be experiencing any stutters or delays. Now, I normally just play this game in tournament format as, like I said, I'm not a huge racing fan, but Wipeout perfectly scratches the racing itch for me. This PSP launch title still holds up on the console today, and if you're just looking for a single fast-paced, balls-to-the-walls racing action game with a semi-decent learning curve, well, please give Wipeout a try. Now, on the other end of the racing spectrum, if you're looking for something a bit more campy, goofy, and maybe a bit more arcade-themed, look no further than Pursuit Force. Now, I have covered this game in one of my previous nostalgia trips, so I won't go into too much detail, but basically you are just part of the Pursuit Force and are tasked with defeating 5 different crime groups around the city. You'll do this in arcade-style missions where you'll be ramming cars, shooting at them, jumping between cars, and hijacking them before you are the one in the driver's seat, and doing it over and over again for all of these missions. It is a seriously good romp, and this game is always dirt cheap, made for the PSP, and it's just great in any collection. Now, if you can get a specific version, I would recommend the NTSC version, which by the way is region-free. All PSP games are region-free except for the movies. If you can get the NTSC version of Pursuit Force, please get it. It's because it was balanced a lot better than the original power release, because the power release is pretty hard compared to the other version. But either way, if you like the premise and you just want to have a game to sink a few hours into, you'll have a good time. Now, Ghost of Sparta is one of the biggest titles on the PSP, and you'll often hear people talk about Ghost of Sparta and Chains of Olympus. Now, I'm specifically choosing Ghost of Sparta because I think it's the slightly better game compared to the two, but it is by a hair's breadth. In Ghost of Sparta, it's set after the first game when Kratos is now the god of war. and he is still having these visions that Athena promised to take away. You are going around and trying to get to the bottom of what is actually causing this, and you'll find out a lot more about Kratos and see his development as the God of War in this game. It has all the amazing moments that made God of War 1 and 2 just really satisfying. The HUD's pretty much the same, it controls really similar, it's pretty much a PS2 experience of God of War but just on the go. And it's got everything. It's just so hard to not overhype this game because it is seriously so fun. The puzzling elements are great, the game looks really good, the voice acting and performances by everyone are still just as amazing as they always were. Like seriously, if you are going to play an action game on this console, I cannot recommend Ghost of Sparta enough. Now, this one is a little bit harder to find and is slightly on the pricier side compared to the other games, but I would still highly recommend it, or if you can't, get Chains of Olympus. They're both really similar and really fun games. Ghost of Sparta just hits the story. It's just play it, okay? I don't want to spoil anything. Just play it. Now, jumping from one icon of gaming to another, I'm going to talk about Metal Gear Solid. Now, there are a heap of Metal Gear Solid games on the PSP, and I was fighting between this particular one and Portable Ops, but I think I'm going to have to go with Peace Walker just for a few reasons. Main reasons being that it has an amazing level-based gameplay that lets you experience the story in bite-sized chunks, which is something that's really important for a portable system. You know, generally when you're playing on portable console, you're not really sitting there for hours and hours. You might do, which is really nice, but sometimes you're on the train, you're waiting for an appointment, you're taking a big old shit, and you only really have 5 to 10 minutes, depending on what you ate for dinner last night, to play that game before you go off and do something else. Now, the reason I really like Peace Walker is because it has that great level-based system. MGS5 also took a bunch of concepts from Peace Walker and expanded on them, like the loadout and full-ton system, as well as Mother Base. So if you love Phantom Pain, you'll get a serious kick out of Peace Walker. Now, this game takes place just after Metal Gear Solid 3 and is told using the cool digital graphic novel style which is used in Portable Ops and in Metal Gear Solid, the digital graphic novel for PSP. Now, I could continue to go on and explain this game further, but I think it's kind of best for you to go in pretty blind and just be blown away by the amazing experience of this game. Also, there is a Monster Hunter collab. I won't spoil it too much, but you'll get there, and just trust me. Go into this pretty blind, and you'll have a great time with one of gaming's greatest characters. If you still have an itch for more shooting games, this one I'm going to recommend is a bit of a random one and is a bit of a mixed bag for some people. But I think this is a great example of another super easy game that you can pick up and just play constantly whenever you've got a few spare minutes. Now, in Coded Arms, made by Konami, you play as a hacker that's infiltrating different areas of digital cyberspace. It takes place as an FPS style game where you run through various gauntlets of rooms. You'll be collecting different weapons, fighting various enemies including bosses, and completing challenges in order to successfully hack through the mainframe, and the entire HUD and aesthetic is connected with this and is presented with the weird Matrix 2000s Hackerman style type. Honestly, this is one of the best FPS games on this system, and it has such a unique and cool presentation that it's really worth picking up and just trying, especially because it's still trapped on the PSP system. Since the game is randomly generated as well, you have a lot of replayability with each different level type and environment, so as the game says, you can jack in whenever you feel like you want to play the PSP FPS banger, Coded Arms, on the go. This one is a little bit harder to find, but you can definitely grab it online for anywhere between 10 to 20 bucks. Do it. Now, if you're wanting something completely different from intense story-driven games and high-octane action, maybe you want something simple, unique, and charming, and a game which is unlike anything else, then please make sure to check out the Japan Studio incredible game named Loco Roco. This is an incredibly cute platformer where your goal is to help the little guys regroup and make it to the end of each stage. I've been saying little guys a lot, and I'm going to keep doing it, so be quiet. Rather than controlling the Loco Roco itself, you actually control the environment, and you'll guide these fellas through cracks, ramps, and various environments. The entire game is just a visual treat as you go through these beautiful landscapes and bright, vibrant colors that just really sets off the dopamine in your brain. It feels weird comparing this game to Sonic, but honestly that's kind of a comparison I make in terms of how the progression feels. You've got different ways to go, you've got light puzzling as well as collecting little different guys, which will in turn make the gameplay experience more satisfying. It also looks really good on this small PSP screen, and because the levels are quick, it's also one of those games you can pick up and play at any time. You can find this at most retro stores. Pretty much every single one I've gone to has at least a couple of copies of this, and there are dozens and dozens of copies on eBay, probably hundreds at this point. The second game as well is out there and it's really good, but it's a little bit more expensive. But honestly, just stick with the first game, see how you enjoy it, and just drop $10 on a really unique and charming game that will have you replaying it over and over. Now, on to a few of the ports on the system that were made specifically to the PSP's advantage. Let's start with what I personally think is the best port of any game on the PSP, that being Tony Hawk's Underground 2 Remix. This is the definitive skating game on the PSP. Once again, like the console versions of other games you see on this list, you get all the hallmarks of Tony Hawk games. A fully patented story mode, creator skater, free skate, multiplayer, so much more, it is all here. The game as well runs great, has an amazing soundtrack and lots of different tricks, jumps and objectives for you to master just like in the main game. The story is simple and mainly an excuse for varying locations, with you being kidnapped by Tony Hawk and Bam in order to travel the world, with the losing team paying for the entire trip. This was also in the later era of Tony Hawk games where you could hop off your board and you've got the special meter and slow motion stuff going on with the special meter, so this is really where the combo system starts to get super crazy and you can expand and just do so much with it, and it's just so much fun and so addicting. You'll literally find yourself just playing free skate for like an hour, which is what I often do. This is like my go-to outside game when I'm going to the doctors or whatever. This is what I will be playing. This one is a little bit harder to find and a bit more expensive, around like 15 to 30 bucks, but I promise you the price is well worth it for the content in this game. If you love to shred while jam into some classic punk tunes, this is 100% a required pickup for you. Now, I also think that every good system needs a fighting game, and if you're gonna pick one for your PSP collection, I cannot recommend Tekken Dark Resurrection enough. To this day, this game still looks, runs, and feels incredible on the PSP system. I mean, you're looking at the footage I have captured on my PSP right now, and it's just absolutely amazing, crisp, and just so good for a PSP game. Like, seriously, look at it. This has everything you'd expect from Tekken. A story mode for each character, customization options to make the character look however you want, some basic online ghost modes which let you challenge opponents that slowly rise in difficulty. One of the coolest features about this game as well is that you can play co-op with friends through ad hoc, and you can even send them a demo of Dark Resurrection to their PSP so they can try it. There's also Tekken Bowling, so bowling simulator sorted for your PSP needs, although it's a little bit suspicious looking. This game, you can find it absolutely everywhere. I think I got my copy for literally dirt cheap. Honestly, for a few bucks, you cannot go wrong with Tekken Dark Resurrection in your collection. Continuing on with a little bit of the fighting games, this one is a bit more of a niche recommendation, but even if you aren't a Final Fantasy fan, honestly, I'm still going to recommend these two games. Square Enix gave so much support to the PSP during its life cycle, and I think the Dissidia games are some of the highest quality stuff they've put out on the system. The premise is simple. The heroes and villains of the Final Fantasy world are sent to an unknown land, being forced to fight each other. The story of the game folds out from multiple characters' perspectives in an arcade-style story mode, with multiple cutscenes in between fights to really flesh out the characters, their development, and the alternate world that they're currently in. The real joy in this game comes from seeing character interactions between fan favorites, and it's really interesting to see which character clicks with who. As for the gameplay, I actually think it's one of my favorite fighting games ever. This is due to how satisfying and multi-directional the combat is. In Dissidia, you have two different types of attacks. Bravery attacks, which build up a number underneath your health bar, the bravery number that is, and HP attacks, which deal damage equal to that bravery number. While you're attacking with bravery attacks, you're actually stealing your opponent's points from their number, and as you hit them, you can break them when they hit 0, which gives you a huge boost in points that can turn the tide of battle at any moment. There's also this really cool chase mechanic where certain moves send your opponent flying and you chase after them in a dodge attack fest where you'll be exchanging blows until someone comes out on top. It is so dynamic and seriously satisfying when you manage to get the upper hand on your opponent who previously had it on you and the complete rhythm and tide of the battle turns. It's so much more complex than that you've got so many different moves to choose from, different equipment, Final Fantasy summons. Of course, you also get like a super where you go into EX mode, which are awesome pieces of fan service for each character as you get to unleash their ultimate move on whoever you're fighting. Now, both Dissidia and its sequel, Duodecim, are amazing. I personally enjoyed Duodecim a lot more as its story mode is way more engaging, but there's so much here in both games and there's such amazing value that sometimes these games you can find for like 15 to 30 bucks, sometimes cheaper if you're lucky. These special editions, which are an absolute treat, are a little bit more, but they are seriously worth it if you're willing to fork out the extra 20 bucks for them. Final Fantasy fans, this game is a must-own for the PSP, and for non-Final Fantasy fans, give it a shot. The mechanics themselves might just win you over to the entire series. For the final game I'm going to recommend for this buying guide, it has to be this one. This is beloved by many and is considered one of the best, if not the best game in the series maybe. It's got amazing music, familiar characters, a bunch of new ones, a revamped combat system. You'll just keep coming back for more with this game. This is the baby of Tetsuya Nomura and it features many Square Enix characters. That's right, it's the famous prequel, none other than Crisis Core, Final Fantasy VII for the PSP. This game sold so many PSPs, I'm telling you right now. This game is set before the events of Final Fantasy VII, following third-class soldier Zack in the lead-up to the beginning of Final Fantasy VII. You don't really need to know the full plot of Final Fantasy VII to fully appreciate the original, despite them connecting. But, of course, if you go in with some pre-known knowledge, you will enjoy it a lot more, and playing Crisis Core will really help you appreciate Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth. This game is also relatively pretty short. You can finish it in around 10 hours, maybe 15, but it is packed full of side content and Final Fantasy VII fan service. You can play this game for easily 30-40 hours. I think my original run was about 35 just by doing all the side content. Now, there is Crisis Core Reunion, the HD remake with a lot of quality of life features that was made recently, but I still think the original has a different charm to it, with its different models and different voice actors, who bring a little bit more of a mature vibe to the characters over the pluckiness of the Reunion VAs, both which I enjoy for different reasons. I really think that Crisis Core and Crisis Core Reunion are really fun games, and as long as you're playing Crisis Core, honestly I'm happy. But seriously, this is such an amazing game, and if you're going to get any game on this list, please get Crisis Core. It's got great combat, great music, a great story. This game will make you laugh, make you cry, make you mad, and ultimately give you a gaming experience like no other. Seriously, if you're picking a single game on this list, or even a reason to buy a PSP, well, you're looking at it. Go on. Embrace your dreams.
Thanks, Angel.
And that does it for our list of PSP games that I recommend. A lot of these are pretty cheap, easy to find, and you will have a blast with all of them. This will keep you busy for months and months to come. It's really good fun. There's also PSP movies and a lot of other accessories. Maybe I'll make a PSP console accessory and all of that kind of video. Let me know what you guys think and if you want something like that. But we've come to the end of the video. I hope you enjoy your PSP journey. Please comment down below what other games you might recommend a beginner to get and how much they are. And until next time, remember to keep shredding. See ya!